So thank you, everyone. I'll kick things off. So my name is Harriet Green from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm the head of scholarly communication and publishing. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about digital humanities and digital publishing as it's manifested in the library, and using my work and experiences to kind of illustrate some of the things that can happen with the intersection of digital humanities and digital publishing. So first I wanted just to give an overview, a brief framing of how it's evolved at the University of Illinois Library. So I began as an English and digital humanities librarian about 8 years ago now. And in that position for approximately six and a half years, I worked to develop services, tools, and opportunities for faculty and students to pursue digital humanities research. And a lot of my work came through the Scholarly Commons, which is our digital scholarship center in the University of Illinois Library. And so through the Scholarly Commons, I and a number of other librarians and specialists offer services for research data, GIS, digital humanities, and we also collaborate with campus partners to offer services for things such as statistical consulting and such. And so for my role for digital humanities, I consulted, offered workshops, and offered many services for helping students and faculty to engage with tools and platforms that would help them pursue digital humanities research. And among those platforms, I worked extensively, more and more, on helping them do digital publishing, so finding ways for them to disseminate research. And this primarily came through Omeka and Scalar, two multimedia platforms. Omeka is developed at the Center for History and New Media at George Mason, and Scalar came out of the University of Southern California. So these are both digital humanities-oriented tools that are often used for platforms for publishing. And that was kind of the primary way that I worked with digital humanities and helping people work with those platforms. But then about 3 years ago, we received a $1 million grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation for the project called Publishing Without Walls. And this is an initiative that the library, collaborate with the iSchool, Library School, the Department of African American Studies, and our Humanities Institute, the Illinois Program for Research in the Humanities, to develop a collaborative model for library-based publishing that seeks to really support innovative humanities publishing and kind of thinking through. And the Mellon Foundation gave a number of grants to university presses as well as libraries to think about how do we do new forms of publishing, particularly for the humanities. And so in this role, with the advent of this grant, this seeded our new scholarly communication and publishing department that I lead, and we have the Illinois Open Publishing Network that now supports a variety of digital publishing platforms that is often oriented towards supporting digital humanities projects. So this graphic summarizes the Publishing Without Walls ecosystem. It's really tiny. I'll post the slides later. But the platforms that we use, first of all, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to invent new tools for publishing. We're using open source, very well supported platforms. And so these include, for multimedia works, for digital humanities works, we use Scalar, the multimedia platform, and Omeka. Pressbooks for scholars who want to do more straightforward monograph-like works with a limited amount of media. Open Journal Systems, OJS, for multimedia journals. Commons in a Box out of City University of New York for doing kind of digital networks among academics. And then we use Open Monograph Press for our catalog. And so through Publishing Without Walls and the Illinois Open Publishing Network, we're developing a catalog of works that I'll show one of our most prominent ones to support digital humanities dissemination through publishing. And this is kind of the ethos that we were operating out of. This is a quote from Adeline Coe in Hybrid Pedagogy, and she's talking about how do you incorporate digital humanities, particularly in the educational space, and thinking about, and we approach it from the intersection of technology with humanities scholarship. So really thinking about how do we help scholars really leverage technology to make new scholarly arguments and support them in scalable ways. So now I'm going to briefly go through a few case studies that illustrate some of the things that we've done, or I've done, to work with students and with faculty in using digital humanities tools for digital publishing tools for digital humanities projects. So the first one I wanted to highlight is an undergraduate course I worked with, an undergraduate seminar in public history. And so this was a seminar of about 12 undergrads who were using the University Archives digital collections alongside using Omeka, in particular Omeka.net, which is the web-hosted version of Omeka. And this way, the students were publishing their research project on the history of the University of Illinois. So it's public history, focusing on different aspects of Illinois' history. And so they did the website plus essays that each student wrote. And so this resulted in a highly collaborative student research project that went far beyond your normal history paper. They were able to make use of multimedia, archival images, their own work, some interviews they did, to do ultimately an Omeka.net exhibit on public history of University of Illinois. And the one that they did is called Project 500. I'll see if this works. So Project 500 is a multimedia Omeka site that highlights, in particular, when the University of Illinois integrated and was doing an effort integrating in 1968. And so you can go to that URL and look at it and see how the students incorporated media to publish their work in really unique ways. And it went beyond, again, the classroom. They showed it to community members, former students who had been part of Project 500, and in this way, they really saw the impact of their work stretch far beyond the classroom. Next, I wanted to highlight architecture seminar. So I worked with a graduate seminar in architecture, and they were using WordPress to publish basically a class journal in this case, I worked with this architecture professor in several different instances. One was on modern utopias, and this one was on architectural history and new histories. And so what we did is we taught them, I did a workshop on digital publishing, and then they used WordPress, and then they came up last fall to the Chicago Biennial, an architectural exhibition up here, and they merged that, they built maquettes, and then they built this digital journal that became, again, a collaborative course project that allowed them to publish their work. And so I think this one should be hyperlinked. Okay. So again, you can go to that URL and see their project where each student it's on WordPress, but they were able to publish their essays, some CAD designs, and this is on WordPress.com, so it's public. But again, the students are publishing their work in new ways, and it's, again, seeing the impact and showing collaborative research. And then thirdly, I wanted to highlight with Publishing Without Walls and Illinois Open Publishing Network, we've published a faculty research project. And this is with Quentin Ramsey, who's an English scholar at UT, University of Texas, Arlington, and he studies hip-hop studies and American literature. And so he used Scalar plus Tableau, which is a data visualization software, to create a wholly digital publication that highlights his digital humanities works. And so he wanted to use Scalar and publish his book in this digital platform to showcase his scholarship to broader audiences beyond the normal literary scholars. And so this was our first Publishing Without Walls publication, and so it's at that DOI there. And so this is a book with ISBN, with DOI, it's in our library catalog, and it's our first publication that really shows how do we enable humanities scholars to interact with works. And so this is, see if I can move into it. And so this is his Scalar book, and when you read it, you can see that he's immediately going for many other different types of audiences. And then, I'm not sure if this is the one, but you can see, again, he uses maps, he uses visualizations to showcase his work, his digital humanities work. So again, I encourage you to look through. I can't quite see the screen, I have a different screen, so I'll just conclude. Okay. So just to wrap up, what did we learn about digital publishing in these? digital publishing. So with the benefits that we've identified are that it allows people to discover and access, and particularly students, to access digital content. People are able to develop scholarly critiques through synthesis of visual and textual content. Students are engaging in a collaborative learning environment, and they're building transferable skills in particular. And I have an EDUCAUSE review article that really goes in depth on what we learned and what the students have learned, particularly through digital publishing and digital humanities. The challenges, some are copyright and permission. So working in the digital space, how do we advise and help people work with copyright and permissions for their digital publications? Digital preservation is another issue. So we have an institutional repository, IDEALS, and that's what we're using as the back end for our institutional, for preserving these works, but that's a temporary solution, and we're quickly realizing how do we preserve these multimedia publications. Thirdly, how do we keep sustained resources for providing publishing services and to host the publications. So this is something that we have the Mellon Grant and we have library commitment right now, but how do we keep that going? And then lastly, how do we balance our limited ability to scale up with the needs of faculty and students? So more and more faculty and students are seeking to do digital humanities projects. We've begun to commit staff and resources, but again, we can only do so much. So how do we provide services? How do we advise them, et cetera? Okay, and so that concludes my talk, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end.